Okay, so one topic. You have the answer to it. I think a lot of them.
All right, let's get this show on the road. So I'm going to start with midterms and midterm grades. So I was required to turn in midterm grades last week for posting today. So anybody after 5 o'clock today, you can log on and grades. I wasn't done grading at the time of which, and you guys will get your papers back with the grade and comments. So this is not the typical like go hide out in the corner and computer grades. And I actually have to go through and grade all these things, including some people that turn in 21-page answers. So I'm going through and completing the grading. So what I did was I essentially read through all the papers once, got a gut feel for kind of where you're at, and I graded them from a B- to an A-. So you're not going to see any grades higher than A-, regardless of how you did. For midterm.
I can all the extra grades.
Yeah, for the midterm, you're not going to see anything less than a B-.
Okay.
Now, once I finish grading the papers and I'm completed with all the answers, you may see your grade tick up a point or so. So go from an A- to an A. You may see your grade tick down a point, go from an A- to a B+, or from a B- to a C+. But you're not going to see any movement more than half a point or so. And so again, I read through it once, but I want to get the grading done. So part of the grading, and I want to be clear on how I grade when it comes to written assignments like this and like the paper. It's important. The final is going to be somewhat similar in format as well. So especially when I'm giving you a significant amount of time to do the work, like the paper, like the midterm, I expect that it's going to be coherent, well written. You're going to use grammar, proper grammar. You're going to use spell check. You're going to use all those things that are kind of necessary in order to be able to have a good business-like writing to your answer. And so again, if you look at syllabus, it says essentially that the written component on the paper is going to be a significant portion of the grade. Is going to be based not only on the content, but also the methodology by which you research it and the way you write. So it's got to be, and again, I'm not seeing, with a couple of exceptions, I'm not seeing anything that would raise concerns. And to the extent that there is something that raises concern, you'll get an email from me and I'll say, hey, look, either you kind of slam this midterm out to get it done, in which case I get it, and it's never going to knock off, on the midterm, it's not going to knock off more than a half point, so from an A to an A-, or from a B to an A-. But on the paper, it's going to count for more. So if you just slammed it out, that's fine. But if you're going, hey, look, this is how I write, and I've got some concerns about my writing style, then I'm happy, again, to sit down with you and go, okay, let me, and you'll get some of this back on the paper as well. Let's walk through some of the areas where I think you can make some hay and close gaps and have it close the gaps relatively easily without it being a major issue. For those of you who came out of the military and you have what I was affectionately taught the Army writing style, so things like passive voice, not good. You want to use active voice. You want to write in a business-like manner, so don't make it sound like a law brief because it's not. Don't put in a bunch of fancy big words because that's not how you write in business. People won't read it. It doesn't need to be long. So it was funny, I was talking to one of the physics professors today, and he was like, well, I was kind of whining a little bit about the amount of grading I've got to do. And he was laughing, and he was like, well, you can always grade it with the paper gets a bigger grade. And I said, no, in business, you actually want to have the most concise, accurate answer. It's the best grade. Not necessarily the longest, not necessarily the shortest. You want to first and foremost answer the question. And secondarily, you want to have it as concise as possible because you just have to read it. And normally in business, and most of you guys are working already, folks don't have a lot of time to sit and read. They certainly don't want a novel. So the shorter, the more concise, the better. And so for the paper, it's the same thing. Concise, normal language. Don't try and sound like somebody that's got a PhD because no one will read it. How many folks in here have actually sat down and read like PhD doctoral dissertations and student okay. So you don't because they're boring as hell and they're difficult to wade through. And so that's not what we're attempting to do here. This program is designed to give you the skills necessary to be successful in the business world, not designed to be successful in a PhD program. If you want to do that, after you're done here, we could talk about, like we did last week, we talked about MBA programs. If you want to talk about PhD programs or law programs, we can talk about that in a different class. And I'll give you all the stuff you ever want to know about writing for that, for PhD or for law, which is a different style. For business, we want business writing style. So from my perspective, like I said, I've read through the papers once. You'll see a little bit of an adjustment up or down on the grade potentially, but what you got is essentially where you're at. I left myself a little bit of room on the top side, a little bit of room on the bottom side because you got to adjust up or down. So for those of you freaking out because you got a B minus, it could go up to a B plus.
Yep. I gave it the tail end of the conversation.
Yeah, they're right.
Okay.
For those of you who got an A minus, that's the highest grade I gave until I finish doing the full grade, and I expect that a number of those A minuses will take up to A's once I get.
Does that include the extra credit already?
No, that's the extra credit hasn't even been factored in. The extra credit, what I'm gonna do is here's how I do the extra credit. If you end up with an A without the extra credit, I'm gonna give you an extra credit bank in the final. So essentially, I'll go, look, if you would have gotten a 95 on this thing, and you did 12 points of extra credit, I'm going to give you 100 on this, and I'll carry 7 over to the final. So you'll be able to pay.
Is there going to be more extra credit options, or is that it for the full?
Well, you got one, which is a paper that you can do.
Oh,
And then
we
there'll
still
be,
have that.
yeah, and then there'll be extra credit on the final as well. The final will look very similar to this.
The paper extra credit, that's the same thing as last class?
No, I think I've adjusted it, but let me take a look. I know I've told you that a couple times, but I actually need to take a look at it, and I'll spin you back. I'll spin you back something if it's completely identical. But I think it is. Take something you're learning in this class, take a look at some current periodicals, and then so again, that class was very similar.
Same concept.
Except this is more about macroeconomic policy and banking policy, not investments and corporate finance. So any questions on?
Sorry, can the extra credit be put for both papers?
No. The paper doesn't qualify for extra credit. Paper's really, in this class, the paper's really important. It's the one piece where you've got kind of a free-form approach to how you can get things done. Now it's graded at the same weighting as class participation in the 2 exams, but you've got there's a little different view on it. And I tend to look at that and go, you need an honest assessment of where your writing is, and you're going to get that on the paper. That's one of those opportunities to kind of pull stuff forward. Exams, I tend to give extra credit on because some folks see it.
But we can ask these stuff before it's the end of the quarter, is it good intro?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. Yes, sir.
And you said it's not due May 1st?
No, it'll be due the last day of class.
I know we discussed that. I was going to ask other things.
Yeah, I didn't know. I originally put May 1st because my intention was to do grading like I'm doing here, getting back to papers and go, okay, here's some feedback, stuff like that going in the final. What I'm getting, or kind of the impression I'm getting is that's less important to me than having the extra time. And so I'll go with giving the extra time instead. If you give me the paper early, I'll happily sit down with you, go through it, grade it, and you can get feedback. But if you need it up until the last class, take it. And then I'll grade it, and so that gives you a little bit more time. This semester, particularly with a couple of missed classes, is incredibly compressed. And so I don't want to compress it any further than having this paper due in a week. So
And this might be too much to go over, but what's the final format?
final format is going to be exactly what you just saw, and I'm debating now whether to give it to you ahead of time and let you take it home.
Yes,
Whether to take it home
how
final.
many hours it took to do that?
Well, no, it would be fewer
Oh.
questions. It would be if it was the same format, it would be an essay type format. But where I'm leaning now is to go, okay, let me give you the final, and give you a couple days to get it done, and then turn it into the last class. As opposed to doing an in-class, sit down and stress out final, especially with essays, because I won't be able to read it and write it in here. So, so I'm leaning that direction, which again, this class, fortunately, I feel that you guys are probably sensing that I've got a lot more flexibility in how this class is taught than the last one. The last one was very much a fundamentals class. You got to get through from chapter 1 to 16. You got to cover all these concepts. This one's got a lot more free-form capability, and so I'm taking advantage of that, again, based on some of your feedback from last class as well. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, do you think you're gonna give us a feedback for our midterms right now?
Oh, yes, you missed that part.
Okay.
Give preliminary grades that could go up a little bit, that could go down a little bit, but the post it. And you're gonna get these back with notes and everything else, probably next Monday. So. But, so your midterm grade isn't necessarily a midterm grade, but it won't be too far off. I read through everybody's ones, kind of took some preliminary notes, but I had to get grades in a couple days after I got the midterms. And so I didn't have time to really grade them the way I wanted to grade. Any other questions before I dive in? Oh, no, it's up on the registrar's website. I haven't actually put it in there yet.
I think it's in the self-service.
Yeah, the self-service one. I haven't put it in there yet because they're not actually final to me. So I'm not gonna, when they're final, you'll see them in Moodle.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're final, you'll see them in Moodle, and I'll also hand them back to you. All right, so the last class, we talked about asymmetric information, but we talked about it in light of really graduate school education. And so for those of you who missed last class or left early, sadly, you actually missed probably one of the more useful classes of the entire of your entire college career. Thank you. What?
What part was it?
It was after the break.
Yeah.
It is, except I sat back there, so I don't want to hear anything.
It was the most important part.
What was it?
Do you want me to say it?
If you could share quickly, you could share.
Not that big for
We're just
done.
Discussion of whether or not it was beneficial to go after a master's degree.
yeah, so we're just really
That's
rushing.
money, right?
Where to go and what to look for in the next program.
We're just talking about, he said like, class, like,
And what was it? You were going to do it.
It depends.
and he gave us a lot of good pointers. And actually, I'm invited.
Well, what did you recommend?
It depends on the situation.
It's data, right?
It's beta. It's the beta. It's the beta. That's the risk we write associated with
I think
So-
you shouldn't go, right?
So here's generally my answer was don't go. It's not, the return isn't going to be worth it. However, what I will tell you, for those of you who didn't miss, but still want to talk about it, don't hesitate to grab me after class or on breaks. The one thing I offered was I said, look, if you bring in a resume, I've been doing hiring for 20 years. And in a business setting, I will look at your resume, I'll tear it apart, I'll tell you what's good, what's not good, and you go, based upon this, and this is what I want to do for a living. Should I go to law school? Should I get a master's degree? Should I do this or that? I'll happily tell you, based upon what I'm looking at, what, as a hiring manager, kind of what you should be seeing. And I think the most important two things I mentioned last week to kind of recap was one, if you are going to go for an MBA, and you can get into a top school, regardless of how much it's going to cost you, you go. So if you can get into Harvard Business School or University of Pennsylvania at Wharton, you go. And you just suck it up and you borrow the $150,000 and you go.
Oh,
Because it'll come back in about 3 years. The payback will be there.
Really?
But if you can't get into one of those schools, then it really depends on what your experience is and what you want to do with your career, whether you go or not. So that was number one. And number two, when we write resumes, we tend to emphasize what's important to us, not what's important to the employer. And so a lot of times there's things that you can adjust order on a resume, you can bring stuff forward, and I tell you guys, take advantage. I know it's a pain, but you can take advantage of the Career Center down at St. Martin's. We have a Career Center on campus. Ann Adams, who's the head of the Career Center, has been doing it for 20 plus years. She's got an MBA. She knows what she's doing. She'll go through your resume. She'll scrub it. I'm happy to do the same thing up here. After class, you go, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. You may want to adjust this, adjust that. I've done that for the students down in the dorms as well. And said, okay, here's how I would look at it as a hiring manager, and here's things that you may want to emphasize. And maybe the third thing, which I covered, was don't you disqualify yourself. Don't think you're not good enough.
I'm good at that.
You're better off letting the potential employer disqualify you. They'll throw you in the garbage, and it's not a big deal. But don't you presume that you're not good enough for some of these jobs that are out there, because you probably are. And so apply if you want. If you even remotely think you're qualified. If you even don't think you're qualified, but you'd like the job, apply. All they're going to do is toss it if it's not going to work. And you might be surprised on when you get brought in for interviews. I became a CFO at 27 years old for a law firm back in New York. And it was because I had my boss tell me to apply for a job. He said, you got to run a job here, apply for a job, go apply for a CFO job at 27. I hadn't even finished my master's yet. I was just wrapping up my MBA. And so he said, apply for this job. So I did, and I got the job. And so I was like, oh, well, crap.
That's funny. I just applied for a medical sales job, and it said a degree was required, and I'm in my third year. But the guy interviewed me anyway.
Yeah, you did exactly what. If you're not qualified,
You have to have your.
yeah, let them tell you you're not qualified. Don't you pre-select yourself. There's not the reason I mentioned the general manager's position at Glassdoor in this class was as much because there's not a person in this class who I wouldn't trust to do that job. Now, you may not want to do the job. You may not like the job.
What's the job again?
Well, I filled it now.
Oh.
But I mentioned it, you were gone.
No, I remember you saying it. You said like 78 years.
75.
Sorry, I get a minute now when you're in death door.
But it's you guys. There's nobody here that couldn't do that job. I'm looking at. I've now had you for the better part of a semester and a half, or a quarter and a half, and graded your stuff and seeing the people that you have class. I mean, you're reliable. You know what you're doing. You're doing a bunch of stuff non-traditionally, and that takes a lot of effort. Working full time, going to school full time, or going to school part time or full time takes a lot of effort. So again, that was what was covered, but it was much longer and much more enough, and a lot of questions. So now we're going to talk about asymmetric information in the financial system. You guys wondered why I don't get 9 slides and I only got through 6 last time. So adverse selection. Really what happens is the less desirable stuff is what you get a chance to buy. When you think about how financial markets work and how companies work, there's 2 reasons that a company would go out to market and sell part of itself or sell all of itself. What would those 2 reasons be, do you think? 2 predominant reasons.
Increased capital.
So Joe hit 1, which is raise capital. They're growing like gangbusters. We need additional capital. So we're going to go to market and you want additional investors because we need more capital for growth. What's the other reason?
crap, they want to get it off the books.
It's crap, they want to get it off the books. It tends to be a barbell. It's either really good or really bad. Now, how many times do you think someone's going to go to market and go, well, this business is crap, I want to get it off my books?
Never.
Very rarely. Sometimes. Sometimes.
There's a good reason.
Yeah, sometimes they will, but generally, it's always going to be, with the right management, and I've done this myself a few times, in some of the companies that I work for, with the right management, or with additional capital, or with, a little tweak here and there, this company can really take off. But we just don't have that right now, and so we need an investor. You're going to hear almost the same story on either side of the equation, but the only people that really know whether it's growth or whether it's crap are the folks inside the company. They're the ones that know. So what you got there is asymmetric information. You, as the outside investor, or the outside person looking to buy, don't know all the stuff the insiders do. So you're going to get the same story, whether it's crap or whether it's a great opportunity, and the asymmetric information is they know you don't. So how do you overcome that? Give me some ideas. How do you overcome asymmetric information?
I'm actually studying, learning, looking at the market, looking at the company, business research, researching, figure out what is going on, how can I invest in this company, looking at the financials, or what you can look at least. This is something I will look at the market, this is something good too.
So when you go,
Have one of those inside people in your pocket. Pay them.
It works.
Well, no, you pay a third party who knows the market to come in and do the analysis for you.
so you guys are hitting on it. So when you go out to buy a house, how many of you guys bought houses? You go out to buy a house, what do?
Inspector come in.
You get a home inspector that comes in. You do all this, and you get on Zillow, and you look at Realtor.com, you look at comparables, you get an appraisal done. Banks can require that. Home inspection. So you have the outside people come in who don't give a crap about this house. You might be emotionally invested. You love the pool in the backyard here in Washington. Oh wait, that's a puddle.
I was like, that's
Still
not
high. Still high.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But you get emotionally invested in this thing. But you're going, I'm going to get a home inspector in here. Somebody who really knows houses. They're going to look at the foundation. They're going to look at the plumbing. They're going to look at now. They're not going to necessarily find everything that's wrong with it, but they're going to do it unemotionally and for a few $100, and they're going to come up with a list of stuff. Now, what are you going to do with that list of stuff?
You're going to take it back to the seller and renegotiate the price.
You may take it back to sell and renegotiate the price, and
That's fine, the house at all.
or not buy the house at all. Well, in a business setting, you got the same folks are out there. And I think Oscar, you might have said it. Who would you hire to go do a proctological exam on a business?
what?
That's a great one.
Wow.
And that's how.
Who would you hire?
You.
I could do that, yes. Who else?
Let's start one so hard as that.
Okay.
You hire, there's due diligence firms, CPA firms. Most CPA firms, especially the big four, have entire mergers and acquisitions departments, and their sole purpose in life is to go into businesses and do due diligence on them. They look at the IT systems, they look at the accounting, they look at the workflows, they look at the market, they do a market analysis, they do a product analysis, they review the legal components. They basically audit the business. They go, okay, just like a home inspector would, or I need to take my car to my mechanic, and you start by mechanic and you never find a damn thing, is here's all the big stuff. And here's what you need to know going into it so that you either go, okay, it is what I thought it was, or you readjust the price, or you do like Charlotte said, you walk away, you go, okay, bye. But those folks are generally dispassionate. Now, I will warn you that accounting firms and other folks, unlike home inspectors, when you're buying a company, and again, coming from my background in private equity, which I think was actually discussed a little bit in the readings, if you go into private equity, we generally have a connection with an accounting firm, our preferred accounting firm. That preferred accounting firm wants us to keep coming back over and over again. Unlike a home inspector, where you may do it once every 10 years, and you're probably not going to use the same home inspector. The private equity guys go back to the well, or the accounting folks expect the private equity guys to come back to the well over and over and over again. What do you think that does in that transaction?
So there's a bias.
It creates essentially a bias toward risk aversion on the part of the accounting firm, because the last thing they want to do is hand a clean opinion to the private equity firm, which is feeding them several $1 million a year in business, and have that company blow up in their face. So they're going to tend to have a bias. So it's not going to necessarily be a neutral third party. It's going to be a biased third party that's going to come in. So if you're selling your business, or you're in the management team for a business being sold, recognize that the private equity guys' accounting firm, while they might be independent accountants, are truly not economically independent from that buyer. And there's going to be a bias toward protecting their client, because they need that client over and over and over again. Where you might get a more neutral approach from a home inspector, in the business world is going to be a little bit different. So this asymmetry, or different information, is common in a lot of markets. It's common in almost anything you buy. We talked about it earlier with the, you're buying a used car. Who knows most about the car? The guy who sold it. The dealer might know something, but generally they don't know crap. They bring the thing in, they clean it up, and they send it off. The previous owner knows a lot, and the new buyer knows absolutely nothing until about 6 weeks later, when they find out all the stuff that's right or wrong with the car.
Unless you get a contract.
Even if you get a Carfax, I can tell you that that's only as good as,
Everything's reported done.
yeah, that's only as good as the Carfax is good. I mean, I know that sounds
Only
circular.
if like you get it like truly fixed by like a true company, you make an insurance claim, it's all done through the VIN number. Otherwise, you do
Like,
like,
not everybody has that.
no, if someone can wreck this car, go, okay, Jimmy Bob on top from away, and then no one knew.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
The whole time it's
See,
like.
we learn all sorts of practical stuff in my classes.
But even if
I
you
like
make an
it.
insurance claim, and if there's no police report, they still don't have to report.
Yeah, it depends on the insurance company, it depends on the car, it depends on where you have car service. Sometimes the service records are in Carfax, sometimes they're not. So there's no one good spot where you can go and just, now they want it to feel like it's, you check with us and then it's good,
Auto
it's
check
good.
is better.
We said that before.
Also what?
I swear, like all the time, it'll be a clean Carfax, and then auto check will have an accident.
Oh,
It just depends on like who they're reporting to.
So savers, folks who have money, tend to keep the best opportunities for themselves. They don't need to share. If they've got excess cash, they can share it. So if you're looking at somebody who's selling, you should also be looking at, okay, why are they selling? Inspect it, and take a look at them generally. Are they a net saver or not? Because if they're a net saver and they're selling, there's probably something a little bit wonky or fishy here. Best opportunities like that. Why would I, if I got an apartment building in DuPont and it's doing really well, why would I sell it to Oscar? I'm fat, dumb, and happy. Unless I'm getting ready to retire or die, or I want to do something different with the money. Now, the option is I may have $1.6 million tied up in this apartment building, and I found a better opportunity where I think I can get a higher return. I sell the apartment building and go buy that. But those are the things you have to really investigate and don't take just for face value when you're sitting in a transaction. Generally, a saver's not going to give up a high value asset. Matter of fact, what I would probably do in that particular case is I go, okay, I've got this asset and I know it's good and solid and the risk level is low and my returns are high. I'm going to set that aside. I've got a new asset, which I'm looking at investing in. I may get participants on that because there's risk. It's like asymmetric information. I'm buying it from somebody else who knows more than I do. And if that opportunity sitting out there, that should be raise a question mark. The other part, and we've talked about this a couple times, is you are not going to find routinely in even a moderately efficient market, you're not going to routinely find these great opportunities that are just too good to pass up, that are being sold by somebody on a street corner type of thing. Such things don't really exist. And if you're approached by somebody who's got something that's too good to be true, it is. And even if it's not, even if it's that once in a lifetime opportunity that actually turns out to be true, and you kill yourself from here to tomorrow because you missed out on buying that one piece of property that would have been great, or investing in that one business that would have been amazing. Just remember, it's like finding the needle in a haystack, and you're better off looking generally. If you're investing generally in a well-diversified portfolio of assets, because that's where you get the risk-free rate and data and managing data. And on the other side, your best way to wealth is to own and control the business yourself. And so it's not invest in somebody else's play toy, it's to have your own. And so if you look at how people build wealth, there's really three ways that they do it. One is they own a business. The second one is they own real estate. And the third one is they own somebody else's business. Rarely are you going to find someone who made millions and millions and millions of dollars by being a pure investor. They exist, but it's pretty rare, because in order to be an investor, you got to have something to invest to start with. To start a business, you don't need as much capital. To buy real estate, you may not need as much capital. To run somebody else's business, you might not need any capital. But if you're going to be investing in the stock market, you're going to be in foreign exchange futures, you're going to be in this and that, you actually need money to start, and to get the big money, you need to start with reasonably amount of big money. And so you've got kind of those three components. You got this ownership in one sense, and it's direct ownership, or it's working for somebody else in a high-powered spot. And even those folks, when you dig in, you kind of have real estate investments and kind of have small business investments where they have significant amounts of control. So a high-risk firm, somebody who, let's say they want to go out and their business is going out to casinos and betting on roulette.
That's my job, but I really
Generally wants to sell bonds. Why? Yeah, what happens when a company can't pay off its bonds?
File bankruptcy.
It goes bankrupt. So what happens to the common stockholders? They're wiped out. The owner's wiped out. What happens to the bondholders?
But they try to recoup some by like seizing assets and selling them.
Yeah.
But there's no assets to seize in that
They
event.
don't have
Whatever you
that.
get, double, whatever you get, you get.
Yeah. So what happens? So let's say I got this company and I put $100 in and I put a $100 bond. So I got $200 in total. And I go to play roulette with the $200. Let's say I blow out. How much did I lose? I lost $100. How much did the bondholders lose? $100. Everybody's wiped out. Let's say I take that same $100 and I get lucky. It's 10 to 1 shot. I get lucky and I end up with $2,000. How much does the bondholders get? $100. How much do I get? $1,900. So why would a high-risk firm issue bonds?
Because the payout seems to be great and the risk is relatively low.
The payout for the common stockholder, the payout is really high. And they're doing it all with other people's money. And so if the thing hits, they get all the profit. And if it misses, well, the only thing that's wiped out is their initial investment. They wouldn't issue stock. Why?
Make sure the big proceeds.
Everything that they.
Yeah, they got to share the proceeds. They hit it, And they're going, oh crap, I'm gonna give $1,000 to that guy. I got $100 and I got common stock instead of a bond. And so instead of paying back $100, I now gotta give him $1,000. So when you see companies issuing bonds, and they're small and they're kind of wackadoodle companies, what do you think's going on there? They're betting, man. They're betting with your money. And if that thing hits, they're going to town. They're in good shape. And if that misses, you're wiped out. They're wiped out. But it was worth the risk because you got a 10-to-1 upside. You got a 1-to-1 upside. You got nothing. You got 8% on your bond. Maybe 12%. Maybe it's a jump down. So you can see that there's an incentive, and this was one of the test questions. And again, I'm more interested in your why than the what. So this is the why. This is why a high-risk firm would sell bonds, because they don't want to participate. They're going, hey, roll the dice, baby. We lose, too bad, so sad. If we win, all the money comes to me. Half the losses go to you, all the profit comes to me. So the downside's the same, upside yours to the common stockholders. So that's why you're going to see that. Moral hazard. It isn't my money. It's other people's money. So what does that do? What happens if, and I talked about this in the last quarter. What happens when you got a moral hazard problem?
You bet it all on black.
You got a bet it all on black problem. So again, you're rolling the dice because, let's take the example of I was brought in to a major restaurant chain down in Wichita, Kansas. It was a public company. So it was founded by this dude. They had 300 restaurants, one here in Seattle. We ended up shutting down 80 or 90 of them to survive the recession in 2008, 2007. Public company. The guy owned 3-4% of the company, the CEO. So whose money was it that he was using? All the shareholders' money, all the investors' money. So does he have any, what incentive does he have to really watch those dollars?
Well,
His
Good
name.
reputation, that's it.
Well, he would get
Still.
he would get his bonus as the CEO and then his 3% return on how the company was doing. So he had somewhat of an invested interest in the company, but overall not really.
Not really much. And so what ends up happening in that situation, we'll talk a little bit about business judgment rule in a minute. What happened in that particular situation was 350 restaurants nationwide, California to New York City, California to Boston. So CEO had 5 jets.
How would you?
We had 5 jets. Wow. Because Wichita, you can't get there from here. And a lot of these restaurants were like in Effingham, Illinois, and Houma, Louisiana, and so you want to go visit these restaurants. They're your restaurants. So you need jets to go there. And so we had 5 jets. We had full-time pilots on staff. Now, these jets, Gulfstream 5s, Gulfstream 4s, wow. Lears, 3 Lears, 2 Gulfstreams. So they had these 5 jets parked at the Wichita airport. We had a CFO, who I replaced. We had a CEO, who someone else replaced, a chief operating officer, a chief legal officer, and then a executive chef type person. Each one had their own jet. So they could all go all over the country and go hang out, right? Who's paying for those jets? Do you think they really needed those jets?
No.
Probably not. As a matter of fact, I could tell you not, because when I got there, we sold all 5 jets. Because I was like, we got a hangar that I've got to maintain, I've got folks that are on payroll, pilots are expensive, I've got the jets have to pass FAA inspections, and the maintenance is high. maintenance was more than the jets. I sold some of the jets for $850,000. And we were spending over $100,000 a year to keep the thing in the air, just for maintenance. So, but the common stockholders, the investors were paying, and they don't, crap, this guy owns 3%, but he's getting $1.5 million salary. He's got his disposable private jet. Matter of fact, everybody else had a private jet, or at least the senior folks.
But that's different.
He started another company.
I thought somebody choked him.
No, we fired him. We fired him, fired the CFO, fired the general counsel. All those positions got fired except for the executive chef who's really good.
That's why you make.
But complained about not having a jet.
No, I had one that didn't.
And so, company cars. What do you think we had for company cars? When I landed there,
You gave this.
so here's what I got. I'll tell you the story. My second daughter was on the way. And so I said, okay, we're selling the jets. And I said, what?
Let's sell the jet.
But if you need to get home to Seattle really quick, you can use the jet. And so you don't really want to sell that jet because, and I'm sitting there going, part is going in the tank, like double-digit year-over-year sales declines, and I'm like, and you're telling me, you're basically bribing me going, well, you can fly back forth to Seattle with a private jet.
That's selfish.
And mine was the cheap $850,000 one, so I didn't, no little private jets with me. If I'm going to do a private jet, I want a fun-size jet. So I landed there, and what do you think the CFO's company car is? Nope.
Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
Mercedes S55. The CEO's Mercedes S55 AMG, the general counsel, Infiniti P45, are general managers or our regional managers for the stores, Acura TLs.
That's pretty.
I don't know how much.
Those aren't.
Well, in comparison to a Honda Accord.
Oh, yeah.
So Acura TLs for all the regional managers. The chief operating officer, BMW 550. They got to pick it. Pick your own. Those all got sold.
I feel bad for stockholders.
Yeah, so stockholders. So the reason this company ended up dealing with me and my friends from Lone Star Funds was because they did their homework. So Lone Star Funds did their homework and they said, oh my goodness, look at this balance sheet. They've got jets. They've got all these fancy cars. They do their little visits. They go talk to companies. They've got all this real estate that they bought with the investors' money, no mortgages. And they said, well, we could sell these back on the real estate. We could sell the jets. We could sell the cars. We can close some of the underperforming restaurants. By the way, if you go to one of the restaurants in Las Vegas, Del Frisco's in Las Vegas.
Okay, if it ends up going there.
Yeah, the Del Frisco's in Las Vegas. If you go there, they have a table which they spent over $100,000 on, which is a James Bond table. So you push the button and it plays James Bond theme music, and the top raises up, and there's a wine bottle in there of this like high-end wine, where the wine bottles have all been engraved with each of the James Bond movies and autographed by the star. And so there's this big round table with and lights. Oh yeah, over $100,000 to pay for it at a charity auction. Now it's really cool, but I don't necessarily know if that was best use of shareholders' money. However, so why couldn't they sue? Why don't the shareholders sue these people? This is horrible. Why don't you sue?
That's what everyone does. But
Oh, that's pretty common. It's far more common than it should be. So why did they get away with it? How did they get away with it?
What were they getting paid?
No, it depends. Anywhere between 250 and $1.6 million.
Shareholders.
Oh, shareholders, the dividends were de minimis, and the stock price has gone down.
I was gonna say, it's like if they're making money, and I can see them giving us.
For a while, they were making money because the company was growing really fast, so that's why these folks felt like they were like that at S&P5, over $100,000 purchase price back in like 2000.
Is there a policy that protects like the one in there?
Yeah, like the one right there.
Yeah.
The business judgment rule. So essentially,
Explain like it's mine.
there's this legal rule which says folks are operating in the best interest of the business. So they can come up with it. Not might be a bad answer. It might not be a good idea, like having 5 jets. But if they go, hey, look, we needed 5 jets because we got these 308 restaurants all over the place, and some of them are in really small cities. Our time is really valuable. We can't get there from here in Wichita, Kansas. So we need the jets. The court's going to go, well, business judgment rule. It might not be a good idea, but it's not an illegal one. It might not be a good idea, but it's not stealing your money. Their business judgment said that there's a rational reason to have these jets, and so we're going to have the jets.
How do they
Like to sell your stock.
rationalize?
That's a tougher one. The luxury cars are a tougher rationalization.
Yeah.
Their argument would be that they needed to provide, because the performance of the company had been strong, they needed to provide exceptional level of benefits to certain key employees in order to retain their services. And so part of that benefits package included a high-end company car on which they had to pay taxes for personal use. Included life insurance, included stock options. So business judgment rule is a giant hole through which a lawyer can drive you through as a manager and let you get away with pretty much anything except stealing the company bond. So if you make a bad decision, if you make no decision, as long as it's not an illegal decision, the business judgment rule will cover you. And so that creates moral hazard, right? Because all of a sudden now you're like, hey, it ain't my money. And as long as I can justify this thing and it meets the straight face test, and sometimes not even meeting the straight face test, I ain't going to jail. I ain't gonna have to pay it back. So it creates this misalignment of incentives between management and shareholders, or management and bondholders. That makes sense? Now I know these stories are fascinating.
Yeah.
And I've experienced both sides of this. I worked at a company where I was the chief executive. I worked my way up, where we want nothing. I mean, we would go to like secondhand stores and buy furniture, even though we were making $27 million a year, because we were cheap. The company was founded by somebody who was cheap and wouldn't spend money, and that was the culture. And so we just hoarded our cash.
So how do you feel as a key employee and not having a better incentive?
Oh, so the key employees were incentivized with cash.
Oh,
So we had a base, base might be 250, and then you could bonus up to 250. So it was like, yeah, so you could,
okay,
as long as you're,
I like that.
and that would be a typical comp structure there.
It's more practical.
So how do you manage the risk? We talked about this. IBs, what are IBs? You're close. Investment bankers. So if you're looking to buy a company or sell a company, you engage investment bankers. We talked about them a couple classes ago. That's kind of what they do. Well, one of the things that they provide, particularly if you're a buyer, if you're on the buy side, we'll call it, you got buy-side advisory, which is an investment banker that works with buyers, just like you have buyers representatives or buyers agents for real estate, who are theoretically working for you, but they don't get paid once the transaction gets done. Same thing with investment bankers. Sometimes they work for you, sometimes it's a commission. The investment bankers theoretically understand the history, understand what the markets look like. They do that completely independent research and go, okay, now we know what's going on. So they can advise you as to what the pricing should be. They do all the stuff we did last quarter. Compare this to this. Is this a good investment? Is this not a good investment? Compare Packard to somebody else. That's what the investment bankers do. And they gave me this book. And if I can find one, I'll bring it in one of the classes. I may have an older one that goes, here's the analysis of all your competitors. Here's this, here's that, here's the other thing. Take a look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. You got rating agencies, bond rating agencies, and they look at all these companies and they do all the same analysis that we did last quarter, and they go, this is more likely to be able to cover, this isn't. They'll report it out to you as a AAA bond down to D for default. Analyst reports, Dun & Bradstreet, and my favorite company research tool now is Google. A lot of this stuff costs a lot of money. Google doesn't cost crap. And I'll tell you what, some of your most interesting things are going to be found in Google. When I'm looking at a company, 3 places I go are their Google reviews, Glassdoor, how are they treating their employees, and Yelp, how are they treating their customers. And if they're all crappy, then I either walk away or buy low. Or if they're all high, you sit there and go, that's a good management team. They seem to have their stuff together. They're taking care of their customers. They're taking care of their employees. It's probably not a good acquisition target. They're worth a premium. So those are Google, and some of those free type things are incredibly valuable that weren't available 20 years ago. It's changing how investment banks do business. It's dramatically, when you get an investment banking book now, they'll have looked at Google, they'll have pulled down, here's the latest news reports. They don't need to do these clipping service anymore. Here's the latest news reports, here's their bond stuff, here's your Yelp reviews, here's a sub-segment of things from Glassdoor, here's how they treat their employees. And so there's a lot of information out there, Google probably being one of the most useful. And for those of us in this room, it's probably the only one we have access to. So use it. If you're looking to go to work for somebody, Google them, look at Glassdoor, look at some of those things, and go, hey, is this a good company to work for? We kind of talked about that last quarter. If it's a public company, pull down their financials, take a look at all that stuff. So independent directors, they help manage the risk too. Who's an independent director? Management. So for instance, no.
So you hire them from
Outside, they tend to not have a lot of investment interest. So for instance,
so there's no bias.
or yeah, in theory, they're going to be looking out for, because they have a fiduciary interest in the owners legally, and they don't have, and they're not management. So if you look at Dr. Hendricks, who's the president of St. Martin's University, he's on the board of Olympia Federal. He's an independent director. He doesn't work for Olympia Federal. He doesn't invest in Olympia Federal, but he's got a board seat on Olympia Federal, and his job is to ask questions of management. You know, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Be an independent voice at the table. The other thing that's an independent voice are institutional investor representatives, like private equity people who come on the board and they, ask a lot of questions. And I've been the operator normally, and they ask a lot of questions, and they're painful. Well, it can be. But it creates other issues. What are those other issues? Give me a couple other issues that either an institutional investor or a independent director might bring to the table outside of helping manage the risk by asking questions because they're outsiders.
They can book Steve Jobs and fire you from your company.
They could follow Steve Jobs. The board can fire you. And I've seen that many times. That's generally how I get my jobs, or have up until this point. So I've replaced either a fired CFO or a fired CEO. Or I've been replaced a fired CFO and then fired the CEO and replaced that. How else? Your institutional investors, what's their time horizon, investment time horizon? I started talking finance. Like hardcore finance. Investment time horizon means I buy this company. So I'm an institutional investor. When am I going to sell? They have a timeline where they go, because the way a private equity firm works is they raise money from folks like pension funds and others. And they go, okay, give us $20 million, and we'll give it back to you no longer than 10 years with a return. And we have enough time, last class, maybe, if you do the take-home final and you turn it in, maybe the last class I'll walk through private equity. That's the world in which I came. That's an interesting world. You guys should hear it. So it could create other issues. Your investment time horizon is no longer than 10 years by law. Could be shorter. Normally they'll come in and go, we're gonna hold this company for 3 to 5 years. And so they're not managing for the long term. They're sitting on the board and going, is that making me money right now? I don't care if it's got a 10-year payback. I need to pay back within 3 to 5 years. And as they get closer to that investment time horizon, that payback starts narrowing down. They go, how can we make this company look really good so we can sell it? How do we put lipstick on the pig? Put lipstick on a pig?
Yeah, I did it though.
Oh, on the dog? No, man, it's
I
pig.
found
Lipstick on a pig.
I came here because it smells like a few and I put them powder.
So what these outsiders do, what these independent directors do, is they go, look, we're outsiders, so we don't know, so we're gonna ask questions. What the institutional investors do is they go, we don't know, we're gonna ask questions. So that's asymmetric information because they're an outsider. So in theory, they have asymmetric information because they're not an insider or they're not a manager, and so they can start bringing some of that to light. And if there's material information, they should be bringing it public. And so again, that's part of the management process. Proxy rights and disclosures, derivative actions. So proxy rights and disclosures, what are proxy rights? What are proxy disclosures? What's a proxy?
Proxy is like an alternative or something?
Not this usage.
A proxy is like where you have to stand in, so if I'm on proxy, if someone says vote, I'm gonna take their vote and voice their vote on their behalf.
So I'm gonna take you back 12 weeks. Long ago, when bear and bison roamed the forest. So I pulled up the SEC.gov website and pulled out a proxy, a Def 14A. So the proxy, when we talk about proxy disclosures, or SEC disclosures, they're filed with the SEC by the company. They disclose things like executive compensation. And they disclose things like contingent liability. So you've got all your disclosures around executive compensation, options, terminations of key executives, material non-public information that should be made public. You've got 8As and 14As, which are basically disclosures that are being made to the SEC. Those are proxy disclosures, and proxy rights are things like you can put in and say, you know, I'm Oscar West and I own 2 shares of IBM and I want to fire the CEO. So here's a proxy submission and I want the shareholders to vote on retaining the CEO because she's a buffoon. And you've got the ability to do that, kind of. That's probably a bad example, but if you're saying, I'm going to direct IBM to disinvest their holdings, and this was a real thing, in South Africa, when South Africa was at apartheid. And so you had a lot of folks going, look, we demand you divest your holdings in South Africa. And so there were proxy fights.
So that's the same thing that happened with Apple, Steve Jobs, kind of same, or no?
No, the board of directors fired Jobs.
Okay.
And then you've got derivative actions. Anybody know what a derivative action is? So this is so derivative action is you, as a shareholder, suing an officer of the company on behalf of the company for violating their fiduciary duty. So, look, if I'm the CEO of the company, and I'm kind of using this jet for private use, and I'm hiring my brother-in-law for $850,000 to clean out the pool that I had installed outside my office at corporate headquarters. You're going, hey, look, this is a business judgment rule stuff. You're robbing the company blind. You're pulling Dennis Kozlowski at Tyco, and you're putting $6,000 shower curtains in your apartment, which is paid for by the company and stuff like that. Throwing me through $1 million+ birthday party for his 5th wife at Sardinia. So it was, it was not a good thing. So do you think he, as a CEO, is going to have the company sue him and fire him? No. He's God. I'm not, screw that. I can do whatever I want, I'm the CEO. Well, Oscar, if Oscar owns a share, on behalf of all the shareholders, I'm suing Dennis Kozlowski and naming Tyco as the plaintiff. Naming Tyco is the company. So you're suing as on a derivative action, basically on behalf of the company and the other shareholders, the CEO. And then you go to court, and if he's found liable, normally he'll get fired, and you'll have to pay the money back. You don't get the money, you might get reimbursed for your legal fees. But that's it. But so you've got a derivative action, and if you know somebody who's in a fiduciary position is robbing the company blind, you can sue them as a shareholder on behalf of the company.
Or blackmail.
Well, yeah, that's not legal. But derivative
Like,
actions
people
are
get
legal.
caught. Blackmail.
And in my old world, PE and VC firms, venture capital and private equity. So what ends up happening is your private equity firms take a look at, like the restaurant company that I was talking about. It was a public company. So they started pulling the SEC reports, saw that there was some interesting use of capital, and they said, okay, we're going to come in and make a tender offer. We're going to offer to buy all shares for $22 a share. I was trading at 17. So they had a bunch of people go, yeah, we're going to sell, we're going to sell, we're going to sell, we're going to sell, we're going to sell. We ended up taking the company private, and then they fire the CEO. They sell a bunch of restaurants. They sell the jets, they sell the cars. They restructure the business. They spin one part of it off into another public company, Gulf Coast Restaurant Group. They retain one private, which is now, I don't think it's Lone Star Holdings. I'm trying to think what the name of it is. Like Daystar Holdings, which has Lone Star Steakhouse in Texas Land and Cal. And they go, okay, so they'll take a look at public companies and they'll take them private and then rip them apart and optimize the capital structure. So if you're a public company and you're pushing this too far, a PE firm will come in and take you out. They did it with RJR and Nabisco. That was the first big deal back in the 80s, back in 86, 85, somewhere in that. They took RJR and Nabisco private. They spun off RJ Reynolds and Nabisco, and they fired Ross Johnson, and they made it into this big deal. And if you want to watch a really funny movie, you could watch Barbarians at the Gate with James Garner, one of my favorites.
Well, I have a question. When they pay back the money that they borrowed within 3 to 5 years or 10 years at the max, how are they? You said that they get a return on their investment. Well, okay.
So they don't borrow.
Why are we?
So they only borrow part of the money.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is if you're buying a business, if you're a private equity firm, you're buying a business. So let's say you're buying this restaurant company, and to take it private is going to cost you $350 million. You're going to pay off $150 million of your own money, and you're going to borrow from banks another $200 million. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sell a bunch of the restaurants off. You're going to sell the jets. You're going to sell the cars. You're going to sell these back a bunch of the other restaurants, and you're going to pay down that $200 million. Now, in theory, what you've got at that point is you've got a company that you sold off all this stuff that's adding no value. So the company's still worth $350 million. You have $100 million of your own money in it. You paid off the $200 million or $150 million. You paid off the $200 million in debt, and you paid $200 million on top of 150 because it's still worth the same amount. Now, if you could tweak this and tweak that and blah, 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 you might be able to get $450 million. And so essentially what they do is they leverage the balance sheet, they borrow money, pay that off with asset sales and operating improvements. And then the equity is what comes from the limited partners, and that's what gets all returned. It's an interesting business, and it pays really well, but it's a little high stress because you're always buying stuff that's crap, trying to make gold out of it. The other thing that helps you is regulation. Securities and Exchange Commission, so we talk about SEC, that file all these reports. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is a new thing, which is about to be an old thing and a gone thing because it's now unconstitutional. Sarbanes-Oxley, which was passed after Enron to provide additional disclosures around fair value and intercompany and unregulated transactions. Dodd-Frank, which was banking regulations, which were passed after the 2008 financial crisis. I think they were passed in 2010 in order to better regulate banks and provide additional transparency. And the EU, European Union has significant regulations around disclosures and what companies can do and what they can't do. They make the US look like amateur hour relative to regulation. So if you think regulation, like I do, is a little bit too much here in the US, go to Europe, where you'll be stifled with regulation, or it'll be protected with regulation. But it's a risk management tool. And then the traditional banking system. So this says commercial banks tend to provide capital when open capital markets are unavailable. Someone tell me what that means in English, or easier to read English. Oh, low interest loans, any interest loans. What does it mean when open capital markets are unavailable?
Maybe your company just isn't quite good enough to go public, so you can't trade on the open market, so you need to go to a commercial bank to back your securities.
Yeah, so you can't access the public bond markets, you can't access the stock markets, you've got to rely on a private placement with a local bank. Why do you think they help manage asymmetry? What do banks do? When you're getting a mortgage, what does a bank do? Yeah. What else? What do they do?
I mean, they lend you money, and then they charge you.
Yeah, before they loan you money, what do they do? They look at your credit. What else do they do?
The house.
They get a house appraisal. What else do they do? They ask for your W-2s for the last 2 years, they'll ask for your last 2 years tax returns, they'll ask for multiple pay stubs, they're gonna get an appraisal on a house. What they do is they essentially go, okay, we're gonna get to know you. Probably better than you know yourself. We're gonna look at your credit report, we're gonna look at how much you're spending every month, we're gonna look at your pay stubs, we're gonna model this stuff out. So they take asymmetric, they do the same thing on the commercial side. So if you've got a business, if you've got the weed you feed, and you're gonna borrow money from the bank, they're gonna come out to your store. They're gonna look at your store, they're gonna look at your inventory, they're gonna count your inventory, they're gonna look at your bank accounts, they're gonna see what your activity is in your bank accounts, you're gonna provide them with a year's worth of bank statements. You're gonna have to provide them with, this is my address, so you can sign a personal guarantee and turn your house over to them on a third deed or second deed of trust, so that way if you default on a business loan, they're gonna take your house too. They're gonna come out and do a full exam on your criminal history, your personal credit history, business credit history. What they do is essentially they take asymmetry out by doing all this stuff, but at a smaller level, where an individual investor can't do that. So we as individual investors end up relying either on investment banks and analysts, stock analysts and stuff like that to do that work for us, for publicly traded securities, or for private securities. If you want to get in the private game, you buy stock of a bank, you buy stock of an investment bank, you buy stock of private equity funds. You can now buy stock in some private equity funds. So KKR, you can buy stock in Kohlberg Kravitz Roberts, which is one of the biggest private equity funds. You can buy stock in them now. Or the banking system does it for you, and you participate by making deposits, and they pay you massive interest on the deposits, and then they loan the money out.
Yeah, they do.
And personal touch and reputation. You guys kind of talked about this as it pertains to the CEOs. Those companies are trying to protect kind of themselves and their reputation. But that personal touch and reputation, if you invest with somebody you know, which I wouldn't generally recommend because it should be a business transaction. But if you get to know them by reputation, so Warren Buffett's got an opportunity for you to invest with Warren Buffett, you might take advantage of that. This gets into trouble though, because you have folks like Bernie Madoff, who had a great reputation and high personal touch, and he had great returns, and he was a crook.
Yeah.
And eventually it came down, but for 10 years, he relied on this. And so that's why it's at the bottom of the list. I think it is the last bullet point, because it's not one that you're going to want. Oh, it's not.
Do you think he planned it in health plan?
Oh, yes. Well, at least it didn't take too long before he decided to do something different. So you got the 5 C's. So banks look at the 5 C's when they're gonna make a loan. So you got the traditional banking system. You've got personal touch and reputation, and then the banks look at the 5 C's, and you should too. So your 5 C's are capacity. Anybody want to hazard a guess what capacity means?
Max amount of debt that you can
Yep.
absorb with
Yep.
going on.
If you think about this in terms of a house, which is generally more available than a business, capacity is your ability to pay the mortgage. How much are you making? How much are you qualified for based upon analysis like here's how much that your earnings, your other debt, and so capacity is that conditions. What do you think that is?
Like when and how many you pay.
Area that it's in. When the rat's nest, drugs, prostitutes all over the place, or is it?
Kind of, sort of.
Kind of
sort of.
It's in an area of high value entertainment.
Kind of, sort of. So conditions are going to be the series of environmental conditions against which you're making the loan. So it's going to be things like the business model, the economic, macroeconomic conditions, if you're talking real estate, the area around, which kind of gets into collateral too, the area around the business and or the home or the apartment complex. And so they're going to look at all those external factors and go, okay, what's the interest rate environment? What's some of those are going to go into capacity calculation, and others are going to go into the conditions. Sure.
If they're responsible.
Yeah. How good are you? At the end of the day, every one of these transactions relies upon good faith on both parties. So they're looking at it going, how good are you? Are you a good risk? Have you paid back stuff before? Has your business paid back stuff before? If the business has had rough times, have you stepped up to the plate and cut your salary or put money into the business? So they're looking at character going, how likely is it that this person is going to put everything that they've got on the line to make sure this loan succeeds, or they're going to go, well, other people's money, I'm walking away. Moral hazard. So they look at character, and they also look at how can I tie that character into the loan. So so it's personal guarantees, it's cross-collateralization, it's things like that. Collateral, what's collateral?
Is it like your home or
Assets.
like your assets?
It's any asset that can be easily and quickly attached as part of the loan process, seized if you default, and liquidated to pay. So they're going to look at collateral as a component and go, can I get paid back? And if I can, what am I getting paid back with? Is it a piece of junk? Is it something really valuable? Where's it located? What's the value of it? Is it appreciating or depreciating? Is it inventory? If it's inventory, how quickly can I liquidate the inventory? Is it specialty inventory? Is it general inventory? I had one of the companies that I worked with before I came to St. Martin's when I was doing consulting work, was a specialty medical device company. They had run into problems on their bank line because their collateral was all this specialty stuff that the only value it had was if it was fully assembled. And if it was fully assembled, there was only about 40 places in the world that would ever buy it. And so the bank said, look, yeah, your collateral on the books is worth $650,000, but in reality, its scrap value is about 10 grand. And if we have to seize it, that's all it's worth to us is $10,000. So you convince us it's worth more than 10 grand. By the way, I was unable to convince them it was worth much more than that. Because there's all these weird specialty motors and specialty this and specialty that. And so collateral is important. And capital, what's the capital piece?
Money.
Yeah. How much money is sitting behind it? What's your access to additional capital if you need it? So this is your 5 C's. That's how banks tend to look at any loan. It's how most investors should look at any investment. How do I get paid back? how do I get my return? If you analyze it in light of those 5 C's, you'll generally do well. And banks normally look for, a typical commercial bank looks for 3 methods of repayment. If you can't meet 3 methods of repayment, 3 separate different methods of repayment on a loan, they tend not to issue one. So the first one is they go, can the business pay the loan off through its normal operations? If the business can't pay the loan off its normal operations, does it have assets that we can collateral, that we can liquidate? And if it has collateral we can liquidate and we think it could pay off, we're still looking for a third. What do you think the third is? Close. Personal guarantee.
Personal belonging, is that like?
Yep, so basically you go out and get a loan for your meeting fee. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna go, we think your business is gonna be successful because you're making money. So the first thing that we expect to get paid back, we expect that we're gonna get paid back off the earnings of your business. But if that fails, we're gonna seize all the assets of your business and liquidate them. So we're gonna put a general UCC. We're going to make a UCC filing, which is Uniform Commercial Code filing, and they make that down in Secretary of State's office in Olympia.
Like all your inventory and everything?
Yep, and they basically say, we, bank, have a lien on all these assets, and they file with the Secretary of State. And so, first thing the bank will do when you go to get a loan, is they're going to go do a UCC search and see whether somebody already has a lien on their assets. And if they don't, then they're going to file one. And if they do, you're not getting a loan. So that's the second one. And then the third one, they go, and if we seized all the assets, and we sold it, and we sold your business, and you still owe money, we're coming after you. And you're going to pay us back. We're going to have a second deed of trust on your house. We're going to take your car. We're going to put you in personal bankruptcy, but you're paying us back. So three methods of repayment. And they'll always look for 3. Sometimes, once the business gets really well established, you can make personal guarantees go away. That was one of my specialties, was convincing banks to make personal guarantees go away. But that's hard.
Yeah, how do you do that?
You really have to show the first and second one are so strong that the third one isn't necessary, and or that there's not enough concentration of ownership to where having a personal guarantee on a CEO who only owns 15% of the company is patently inequitable. They don't own it.
And so I just talked through that, secondary and tertiary, second and third methods of repayment.
So now we're going to talk banking. Any questions on asymmetric information? This is fascinating class. This is really cool stuff, huh? It's way better than just hardcore math finance.
I like it better than the first one.
But you need the first one to understand this one. You see that?
I feel like it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way? I don't know, like I feel like you should take this first before the other one. I don't know. You guys feel like
This book is a good book.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think this
Yeah.
the book, if we were given a better book, we would have had a better knowledge of it.
I guess,
this
yeah.
one is easy because it makes it so much easier.
But we'll explain it all.
Yeah, I got that from almost all of you on the student evaluations, and so I will be looking for another book the next time I do 300. Just because this is the last book was roundly. I mean, I had nothing to say, but
Yeah.
yeah, I got that. So
Just straight up like that.
I feel like this is for like yourself here. Like I can really understand it. I can relate it to what you're saying. That it's like the other one, you're saying something which I rely, but then the book doesn't like it doesn't link to me.
well, that's because I don't teach from the book. I teach parallels to the book, but I don't teach from the book. And so yeah, I wasn't. We'll be going with the next. And what I tried to do on the last book was keep the cost down a little bit. If you take my business law class, its cost is way down. I think the total cost was like $70.
And it's brand new, right?
Huh?
It's brand new.
Yes, I'll talk business. I'll pitch that. I'll let you all at it, but I'll pitch my business law class for next semester. Later. So, but we'll talk banking now. But yes, I tried to keep the cost of the book down, but I think I'm going to use Brigham and Weston, which is the one I used as the undergrad, which I thought was a phenomenal book. I still have and still refer to. It's expensive, but it's a really good book. And so, but I was like, oh, I don't want to finance majors in there, so I feel horrible about making spend that much money on the book.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But you're spending that much money on the class, and probably should be probably that extra $60 on the book is not going to make a fight yet. So commercial banks take deposits and make loans. It's a typical bank. When you think of banks, commercial banks, almost every bank is a commercial bank now. And I've got some interesting data in here because I geek out on data, as you guys probably are aware. So
We'll talk about some of the bank data.
according to the Federal Reserve from 2014, there are 6,800 commercial banks. In 1988, there were 12,500 commercial banks. What happened?
Yeah.
What happened? Between 2014, between 88 and 2014,
Big no.
the number of banks cut in half.
Yeah.
What happened? Not really. Mergers. Why?
Right, so we have an opportunity to form the market or get a better share of the market.
So I rely on. Don't be sad. Oscar, don't be cry. I rely on this happy joy in my head that you guys read everything before class.
I got some of it.
I read some of it.
So what happened between 1988 and 2014? The cause, because you're right, it's mergers. What caused mergers? What happened? Administration.
Welfare reform,
Welfare reform was one of the things that happened, but that didn't impact the banks.
welfare reform in 1990.
I know your intention was big.
1996.
There was something there.
All right, so we love history, and some of you love history even more than I do. Okay, maybe not. So the U.S. government repealed a Depression-era banking law called Glass-Steagall.
I never heard about it.
It's in your book.
Oh, I never read that.
Glass-Steagall was passed and essentially said, look, commercial banks can't also be investment banks, can't also own insurance companies, can't also be in any of these other lines of business. They have to focus on banking. And they can't cross state lines. And states had branching laws where the state said, you have to come to the state and request permission to open multiple branches. And we might not grant it. So you had some states where literally every bank branch was a different bank. You did not have U.S. Bank, which is headquartered in Minnesota, out here, because you couldn't have interstate banking. So when Glass-Steagall was repealed and the states modernized their banking laws, all of a sudden these banks like Bank of America and U.S. Bank, Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan Chase, they all said, well, it wasn't J.P. Morgan Chase at the time, it was Manufacturers Hanover. They all said, we're going to hammer down, we're going to start buying. Times are good. For those of you who are old enough to remember the 1990s, times were really good. Bill Clinton was my favorite president because times were really good. And so times were good, banks were flush, everybody was happy. Bill might have been happiest of all.
I'm sorry.
And so as a result, because he was the president.
Oh, yeah,
Over the last time, we actually had budget surpluses. Times were so good, the government was making money. We were paying that down. And so they said, hey, we're going to start buying up banks. So all these little banks got bought by big banks. And so what happened was banking, the asset base has increased tremendously from 1988 to 2014. But concentration in banking has gone up a lot. The top 20 banks have about 70% plus of all the assets. I mean, it's a highly, Bank of America, US Bank, JP Morgan Chase, they're all here locally. Wells Fargo, they're everywhere. Dude, they're everywhere. You go to Florida, Texas, doesn't matter, they're everywhere. Those banks are massive, too big to fail. Citicorp, too big to fail. So what happened was you saw a lot of concentration. Now that came back to bite us in 2008, because when those too big to fail banks were threatening to fail, and Citibank went from $30, $40 a share down to $1, and the government had to pump billions of dollars in the city to keep it afloat. In the past, that bank would have gone under. And we're going to talk a little bit about this here, but because it was too big to fail, it would have taken down a financial system. It's so huge that it would have taken down other banks with it. The government had to prop it up, so it was too big to fail. So you see tremendous amount of concentration. Thrifts, savings, banks, credit unions, they focus on small business and consumers. The difference by regulation is that a thrift has to have at least 65% of its loans, this isn't in the book, must be consumer loans. Small business and consumer loans. They're regulated differently. They're regulated by the Office of Thrift Supervision, OTS, or they're regulated by the National Credit Union Administration, NCUA. But thrifts have to have their lending portfolio predominantly in consumer loans. Commercial banks can have it in anything.
They can't be too concentrated by regulation, but they can have it in anything.
There are over 6,100 credit unions in the U.S. in 2015 versus the National Credit Union Administration. There are less than 750 savings and loan associations left in the USA in 2010 per the Brookings Institution. There were 17,000 credit unions and 4,000 savings and loans in 1986. What do you think happened to the credit unions? What happened to make them cut by 2/3? Just like the banks, they all started merging too. So now BDCUs everywhere. Used to be little credit unions all over the place. BDCUs started gobbling them up. They're acting just like banks. Who owns the credit union? The members, the depositors. Who owns the commercial bank? Shareholders. Do credit unions make loans to businesses? Up to how much percent of their loan portfolio?
Based on that later.
Oh, I did. Just back there. So up to 35% can be in things other than consumer loans. Savings and loans, what happened to them? There used to be 4,000 SNLs and now there's 750. Yeah, what happened? Did they merge themselves into bigger? SNLs are going away at the dodo bird.
You don't hear about it.
Essentially, a lot of SNLs have converted into commercial banks. And then they got bigger, or they got acquired by commercial banks who are looking to diversify into more consumer-facing. So your US banks, your BofAs bought them because they had nice consumer portfolios that diversified their commercial portfolio concentration. And so what you've seen is savings and loans are truly diminishing, both in terms of assets as well as numbers. Credit unions have grown in terms of assets, decreased in terms of numbers because they're increasing concentration. You see super credit unions like Navy Federal Credit Union, Pentagon Federal Credit Union, BECU, and they become super credit unions, which for us as consumers look and smell just like a commercial bank does.
And that's why, because they have enough things right now that insurance just like doesn't get involved with monopolies, all that kind of stuff. It seems like that. It was cool now.
What you've got, not necessarily Sherman Act, although we'll start to get invoked if you ever saw like a Chase and the city merged. And there was some talk about too much concentration when Chase and Wyoming merged, because Wyoming was so big. But what you're seeing now is, and we're going to talk about it, regulation around Basel II, Basel III, where essentially there's a minimum capital requirement, because there's a fear that as these banks are getting so big, they control the economy, not the other way around. So it's less of a Sherman antitrust issue where they're not competitive with each other, and more of a, oh my God, there's so much in assets there that if they fail, they can bring the entire economy down. And you've got all the issues that we talked about asymmetry and moral hazard at play with a bank. And so again, there's concerns around the risk management of banks. So any questions on like what the bank environment looks like? You got thrifts and commercial banks essentially. The book talks about finance companies. That's what I read on as a line as a finance company, especially a finance company. I don't put them in the same bucket. They talk about them in the book, some subprime lending, some of those things. We'll touch on that. But this is what we need to focus on, commercial banks and thrifts. Any questions on this one?
Just talk through that. We're going to cover this slide and we're going to take a break.
U.S. banking regulation. So deregulation led to increased concentration. As we pulled back the limitations associated with branch banking in states, and as we pulled back interstate banking restrictions, and as we released the shackles of Glass-Steagall, and a lot of banks do all sorts of stuff, they started hoovering up all these smaller banks and other financial institutions, and then they become supermarkets. Financial supermarket, where you can go to a bank and you can get a mortgage, you can get your life insurance, you can get your car insurance, you can buy stocks and bonds and mutual funds, and you can get commercial loans and personal loans and credit cards and all that stuff. All in the bank, that's all from deregulation. 30 years ago, when I was still old enough to remember, you couldn't do any of that at the bank. You go into a bank and it was a bank, and you go down the street to the stockbroker, and you go down the street to the insurance company. And if you wanted a mortgage, you had to go to an SML. And if you wanted a commercial loan, you went to the bank. And if you wanted a car loan, you went to the credit union. And you had all these different accounts all over the place, and you had to manage all these relationships. Now, it's a supermarket. You go into the bank, you can get anything. So we talked about this. States reduced their branching restrictions, allowing more branches per bank in the 70s and 80s. So like I said, in some states it was one branch, one bank. In others, they said you can have no more than 10 banks, and you can have, and those banks can't be in any more than 3 counties. So you have geographic restrictions and numeric restrictions. And so what that was doing was keeping banks, and the thought was, we're keeping the banks local. We're keeping the banks investing in their communities. We're keeping the banks small enough so that if they fail, it's not a big deal. It might be a big deal for that community, but it's really not a big deal. And there's other banks that can come in, and so there's small, bite-sized chunks. Banks used to be, and this is, so I used to be a shareholder in Homesdale National Bank, which was owned by my family back in Pennsylvania, Homesdale, Pennsylvania, massive, single branch bank at the time. The only way we got shares was because someone would die. And then you turn the share, you'd sell the shares back into the bank, and then if you wanted to buy shares, you'd write the bank, and you go, I'd like to buy Grandma's shares, Grandma passed away. And they come with you negotiate a price, and then you buy the shares. And so I sold the shares when I bought the glass business. That makes me sad right now. But it's a family-owned bank. Small, one branch, now it's 2 branches, one in Wheatmore and one in Homesdale. That's what most banks were like. They were family-owned, they were community-owned, they were small. It was kind of like, It's a Wonderful Life. How many people seen that movie? Mr. Potter? It's kind of like that. That was what the bank was. So my grandfather was nicer than Mr. Potter. But that's what the bank was like. And so and most banks were like that. They were small community banks. Your bigger commercial banks were in the cities, like New York City. You'd have Manufacturers Bank and Hanover Trust, which then merged to be Manufacturers Hanover, which then acquired Chase Manhattan Bank, which used to be Chase Bank and Manhattan Bank, and then they all merged to be Chase Manhattan, and then
Chase Manhattan acquired Bank One out of Ohio and became Chase Manhattan, and then Chase Manhattan acquired JP Morgan and became JP Morgan Chase. And so that's, if you look at the history of these banks, the ones that exist now, generally the name that they're carrying isn't even necessarily the company that it started with. They normally have a history and it's normally the more recognized brand, but the core bank underlying all these are normally not Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and JP Morgan Chase. It's actually manufacturers Hanover. Wells Fargo is, I think, Union Bank of California or one of those. And so you can go look. That's why Wells Fargo, which was actually started in Minnesota, is now sitting in California with their headquarters. So 1994, the Clinton administration repealed Glass-Steagall. Opened interstate banking by law in 1994. Glass-Steagall was repealed later. So we've had massive size increases and merger activity in the past 30 years. Congress repealed Glass-Steagall in 1994, allowing bank holding companies to enter areas like investment banking and insurance. So what you now have, Citibank was one of the first ones under Sandy Weill to go do that. He started off with a small credit company, finance company in Baltimore that made like high-risk loans to businesses to buy office equipment and leveraged that into Citigroup. So when he retired about 10 years ago, it was the largest bank in the United States. And he did all that in a period of about 20 years. Took an almost bankrupt company out of Baltimore and turned it into Citigroup, all by buying it up. He bought Citibank. That was one of those banks that, when you look at the actual ownership, it's not Citibank, it's actually Commercial Credit Corp, I think, out of Baltimore. Is kind of the current ownership acquired who. 2008 financial crisis led to the passage of Dodd-Frank, increased banking regulation in 2010. And the current administration has said, I'm getting rid of Dodd-Frank. So what Dodd-Frank did was essentially put restrictions on bank capital, listed a bunch of banks as too big to fail, and they have additional regulatory requirements, and added a significant amount of additional inspections and regulations and concentration risks around the types of assets that banks can hold on their balance sheet. And the current administration said, it's horrible, it's terrible, we're going to look at, I guess they're going to repeal and replace everything, including Dodd-Frank. So Dodd-Frank is currently under the microscope. So with that, let's take a break. Let's call it till 5 minutes out of 7. And then we'll talk through banking flows and banking balance sheets.
I have a question.
This one.
Oh, sorry.
No one wants to see Dr. Frank
How
down.
do companies that are like lazy with furniture, like kiosks in the mall, that have like a niche market, how do they afford overhead? And how do they afford a piano company? Not many people play pianos, but yet they have this big showroom and everything else like that, that they're able to display all these pianos in. How are they able to make that? That's what I'm saying, like this, there's a fountain pen store in Seattle, right by a very dominant, hotel. It's a very dominant hotel and everything else like that, so I'm assuming that has some help with them, because they're right next to the hotel. But they do stationary fountain pens. How does a company like that stay afloat? I mean, how many fountain pens do you have to sell to break even? That's ridiculous. Some of them, some fountain pens you go upwards of $700. Those are the rarest yet. More than likely, you're going to be selling them $125, $50 fountain pen.
Yes, what are they paying?
Exactly.
$15-20.
I don't know.
Talking about 4 or 5X. It's got to be Again, a lot of those specialty stores, they analyze to where our brands. They got a high markup on the underlying merchandise.
So while I was in Murphy, my grandfather passed away, I was like, you know, I didn't bring my pens with me, I wanted to write in his book and everything else like that, or when people came in, I wanted to get in my to sign to do it and stuff. There was no, like, no brick and mortar stores in Murphy.
Seattle, you got high end, New York got high end. Myrtle Beach is not a high end sport. That's kind of the point, is they can't survive. Right? You can't survive in Seattle because you got 1.5 million people. You're able to sell enough fountain pens to enough folks who are in a fountain pens to be able to stay alive. But it's going to be probably in a fountain pen store.
No, you gotta go to Seattle.
You know, you want.
Now, you know, maybe you might see like you want
I work
Yeah. I looked at, I think I told you this.
Oh my God.
Kind of wish I did. Send it in, it says,
Yeah, I was about to.
yeah, that works.
I know what I like about it.
Okay, yeah, just give me something. It is hard.
I was thinking about changing my time. Lunch? I don't know. Thinking about doing economics. Because you have a lot of exchange rates and inflation and niche markets and stuff like that.
Going too quick.
I know.
Run out of time.
I know. I think you like that book if you get a chance.
It's like it's eminently
Yeah, it's not that bad.
I think I just did. I'm like, don't tell me that.
I think I work at Best Buy. They should do one. You got church room?
We need that.
You know, my oldest, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. If you wait.
Like, if you have it,
I'll
I'll
be
let
selected
you
for
know.
marriage.
I'm gonna get you going at Best Buy.
Have this, because this
Yeah.
laptop is ancient.
Why not them run the way?
It doesn't look like it's got issues. It must be never down.
Charge, but yeah, so if I play it, we'll play it before.
It's not good. I know. Oh, what?
On. Sorry about that, I'm a little bit more. working.
I sit here because my eyes suck. When I sit right there.
So I just registered.
Yeah.
Wait,
They were offering it. Oh. Was it in class?
Is it in class?
No.
Oh, you know what? Wait, let me look at it.
Yeah, I was talking to Hugo and he said it's hard. That's what he said. That's what he told
So.
Oh, yeah, I told you that too. Yeah.
Never mind, it's 420. Yeah, it's not.
Are you taking with those two?
Huh?
Are you taking with 420 and 499?
I do. I'm not taking 499 for the summer, I mean, because I've heard that it's.
Yeah, but it's not offered again. It's not offered in the fall one or
Next
fall three.
That's okay, I won't be done until like next fall. Anyway.
Oh.
I'm there too. I'm there then for that. I got that for that.
I have like 3 business months left.
Oh,
No, 2, only 2 business months left. And the other one, Renee was like, we want you to take it down and make it not really what they're like. She's like, oh, like 8.5 years.
Are you kidding? You want, you know what?
I can't do that. So we're going to offer it. I was like,
What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna have to take another university.
Oh.
So you know, say,
It's 320 to be 320.
What's a big one? Something local, economic, yeah.
Something like that.
About maybe the local.
320 is operations.
That, yeah.
Oh, wait, 320. Is it not what we're in there? No.
No, we're in, sorry.
No, that was one.
It is
first. Yeah, that's the one here.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I have to do that.
So I have to take that. I have to pay. What is it? Yeah. But that one's. Are you down with that?
I did that one hard.
I think it's a money.
I think it's hard to avoid.
I mean,
But yeah, really hard one. I think.
oh, yeah. It's
It's probably good. If you're not that good with math, yeah, do it. That one's easy.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding. I'll take what Ed said. Yeah. Because mine is like a, you know,
The state there.
Yeah, I think I'll finish the time.
Although, it doesn't necessarily have.
All I
to
have
be
is kind of
in
two.
accounting.
And then I have.
Typically, it's
Yeah,
only
like
like 3
the- yeah,
classes
like
in
the-
accounting, right?
But
yeah, why should they get that 3
Oh, really?
Now, there's 2 things about that.
Yeah.
Her current
And then I asked her.
supervisor, lady,
Mhm.
they're the one who's supposedly pretty hard.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
I was like, what's current? They don't.
she's been out a lot with some
Do you like, you
going
think
on,
of
and she was
I have a
able
prefix. It's not like that.
to take the referral questions from the lady. And so she ended up interviewing my wife's boss's boss. So, okay, she didn't get it, but everyone thinks that's that place. Yeah, not just reputation.
Oh, this is spring last year.
You will be, how long have you been there? Last month. And then okay. Yeah. Intellectual challenge stimulated there. Yeah.
Oh, really? I complain about.
I don't think it depends on.
See, I think that it's all depends on where you're at. Some places, normally they're one or the other.
And then.
Got a heavy load right now.
I feel
All right. So let's talk banking flows.
Money goes in,
Money goes in.
never goes out. No, it goes in, goes around.
Money goes in from where?
So the people,
From the people. So what you've got here is a little bit of tea accounting on how these things appear on each person's balance sheet. So when you're talking about people, individuals and businesses, bank account to you, me, and everybody else is an asset, right?
Yeah.
So it's on the asset side of our balance sheet. However, on the bank, it's a liability. Why?
Because you're lending that money to them, basically to you.
Yep, and they have to pay it back. So there's a liability to the bank. The loan from the bank here is a liability to you, right? Why? Because you have to pay it back. From the bank side, it's a asset. Because they're going to get the money back, so it's a receivable. So we understand kind of where we sit on a bank's balance sheet, right? Simplistically, if it's a loan, it's an asset to the bank, it's a liability to you. If it's a deposit, it's an asset to you, a liability to the bank. So let's go over here to the bank. And this is our buddies the Fed.
Your best friend.
So they have a liability that says it's bank deposits, reserves. So what's this?
that's insurance, okay, that's the stuff, that money they have to have in the bank to maintain it. They have to pass out those assets or those loans and whatnot.
Kind of, sort of. So we have what's called a fractional reserve banking system, where essentially a bank has to hold a certain amount of assets in reserve and cash. And they can loan the rest of it out, and so they can make loans to public or loans to the government. But they have to hold a certain percentage of their assets in reserve to pay these on hand. They can loan everything. So reserve is essentially cash, and it's a deposit at the Fed. So the Fed, they make a deposit at the Fed and go, okay, and then the Fed has to pay it back. So if you get a run on the bank, the Fed starts making payments. Depends, it changes. And the Fed, what the Fed can do, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, is when the economy's crappy, the Fed can reduce the reserve requirement. Why would they do that? So if this number goes, if the assets stay the same, but the reserves go down, the reserve requirement goes down, what's the bank going to do with the money? They're going to loan it out, which is going to do what? It's going to get people to spend. And so that should do what? Stimulate the economy. And so that, you guys, when you take macro, you're going to blow your freaking professor's mind.
What?
Because this is macro.
Oh, yeah.
This is macro, you're just getting it in a different format. So reserves, when they reduce the reserve requirement, it increases the ability of the bank to convert these into loans to public, which then means they make additional loans, it stimulates the economy, and that's part of monetary policy.
So basically, if the reserve is required to be 20%, then it reduces to 10%, then the banks have more 10 more percent of money to go.
Right.
Okay.
You have Federal Reserve notes. What are those?
Oh, no. Sorry. I forgot.
You forgot?
That's something I know, oh man.
Oh, okay.
Federal Reserve note.
I don't even carry that anymore, I don't even fire.
Okay, paper.
Currency.
Currency. Why is that a liability to the Fed? Why is it a liability?
against the Fed.
Right, so let's go back to the old days. In the old days, gold certificates,
Commodity.
silver certificates. And so what would happen is you go, oh, well, that's cool. I've got a gold certificate. And so I could go to the Fed and cash that in, and they're going to give me gold. And so what the Federal Reserve note is essentially nothing more than your representation of a claim on real assets owned by the Fed. Now, what assets does the Fed own? Gold, foreign exchange, loans to banks, loans from the Fed. When would a bank borrow from the Fed?
They loaned out too much money and need to get back up to their required reserve limit.
Yep.
Did you read your book?
Not all the time. I tried.
So you got loans to banks and bank borrowing from the Fed. And what's this? From who? Government bonds. So when the Fed wants to issue more money, what does it do? It buys government bonds. And then prints more money. Anybody kind of think this might be a little wackadoodle?
The Federal Reserve is buying its own bonds.
Well, the Federal Reserve isn't the U.S. government. They're special.
Yeah, and then
But that's just when they try to increase the overall supply of the market, right?
Right. So who controls the Federal Reserve?
the Fed.
So let's take a step back to constitutional law. You got three branches of the U.S. government. What are the three branches? The the executive, judicial, and legislative. Which branch controls the Fed? Huh? None of them.
That was a loaded question.
Because it's special.
None of them. The Fed is so flippin' special.
So the Fed, the control is the Fed.
Yes. But you didn't get there the right way.
Hey, but I said it right.
Yeah, but you didn't have the right answer.
So the Fed is the fourth branch of government?
Yes, the Fed is their own special flippin' snowflakes. They get to do whatever the heck they want, and there's really little control on the Fed. The Fed governors are appointed by whom? The president, on the advice and consent of the Senate. And after that, until the terms are up. The Fed is the fourth branch of the U.S. government that controls monetary policy. Why would they be the fourth branch and no one controls them?
No, reduce moral hazard.
They don't influence.
That's the goal.
Yeah, you two kind of have it. It's so that you can't exert undue political influence on the Federal Reserve. So that you can't use the Federal Reserve to juice the monetary supply, to strike up the economy just before the election, and really use it for political aims. Does that work?
Yeah.
Kind of, sort of. Kind of, sort of. So the Fed predates the Great Depression. It was there's an era of the United States which is affectionately called the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era essentially started with the Spanish-American War and ended as an active Progressive era in about 1922. Before the stock market crash, it was when they elected Warren Harding, and then Harding died and got Calvin Coolidge. So you had two relatively hands-off presidents. Coolidge College.
Where's that from?
I don't know. But that's the progressive era. During the progressive era, what you saw were a flurry of things that were amendments to the U.S. Constitution and a bunch of items like the Federal Reserve stand-up. Essentially, it was an era where small federal government turned into big federal government. You had direct elections of senators, 17th Amendment. So what happened? How did senators get elected before the 17th Amendment, which gave a direct election to senators?
Oh, it was the state legislature did it.
State legislature appointed senators for each state. So you had the 18th Amendment, the income tax. Before the 18th Amendment, you couldn't have an independent, you couldn't have a federal income tax. It was unconstitutional. The only thing you could have was a per capita tax, per head tax. So you had this big progressive era occur. That's when the federal government started getting involved in things like the Sherman Antitrust Act and trust busting and big business. And you had a fight on who would be more progressive, the Republicans or the Democrats. You don't have that fight now. But back in the 20s, you did. Theodore Roosevelt was a progressive Republican, and Woodrow Wilson was a progressive Democrat. And so when you look at the history of the United States, probably the biggest turning point in the history of the United States and how both the banking environment changed as well as the government in general and its role in society changed and how it began to interact with things like the banking world was between 1898 and 1929. That was probably the largest era of massive change in the role of the federal government, and that's when you got the Federal Reserve, and that's when this kind of stuff started to happen. So there's your history lesson and constitutional law lesson for the day. Loan securitization. One of my favorite things. We've talked about it a couple times. Loan securitization is when a bank bundles similar loans together to create loan pools. Capital and receive the payments. So housing market. What other loans get securitized? Car loans. What other loans get securitized? Credit card. What other loans get securitized?
Student loans.
Say again?
Student loans.
Student loans. Those are the biggies. Pretty much any loan gets securitized. At least big ones, where you've got relatively large pools. Why would a bank securitize a loan? Why would a bank create these big loan pools and then sell them to investors? Why do they want them off their books? Yeah, so if we go back to this thing, they keep going, take these off, put another one on. Take these off, put another one on. Every time they make one, what are they getting? They're getting fees. They're getting a markup normally, so they're going, okay, I'm selling them for a little bit more than I'm underwriting them for. And what else they're getting, and we're going to talk about this, is they retain the servicing rights. Or they strip the servicing rights and sell the servicing rights separately. What are servicing rights?
The processing payment.
Yeah, processing the payments on the loan. So they go, okay, we're going to sell the loans. Here you go, investors, we're going to sell loans. Now you're going to pay us to service these loans. For every loan, you're going to pay us X dollars per payment received, X dollars per statement sent out. If we have to foreclose, you're going to pay us that too. You're going to pay us management fees. You're going to pay. So the bank keeps all these fees, or they sell them to a servicing company and makes money on that too. And then they rinse and repeat. Now, why don't they hold them on their books all by themselves? Yeah, they've got a limited part on the liability side. They've only got a certain amount of deposits. They can only borrow a certain amount from the Fed, and they've got their underlying equity capital. And so in order to really juice their balance sheet, they could, you know, if this is limited to $100 million, they could make $1 billion in loans a year if they just cycle those off. And for each time they cycle it off, they get to keep some fees, they get to keep the servicing rights, or sell those too, and they make money. So they become loan origination machines. They offload the risk. What does that create?
Backwards vacuum.
What?
Like a power vacuum.
Let's go back to the beginning of class. What does it create?
Bubble.
Say again?
Bubble.
Potentially. It creates two things. It creates asymmetric information. The bank knows more about those loans than you do. And it creates a moral hazard because they don't give a crap. They'll make the loans and they will offload them to somebody else. That's what caused, simplistically, the housing crisis in 2008. The banks and mortgage companies didn't give a crap. They originate them, they securitize them, they sell them. The analytics say, oh, mortgages never go into default. And so what ends up happening, or they do, but it's a relatively small percentage. And so what ends up happening is that securitization created this moral hazard, where all of a sudden the folks can originate the loan, securitize them, get them off their books, retain the servicing rights. And by the way, when the loan goes bankrupt, depending on, there's a lot of complexity around things like putbacks and other stuff, but setting that aside, when the loan goes bankrupt, they get paid to then foreclose on it. And then they get paid to sell the collateral. And so there's kind of this perverse incentive. Now you've got, we talked about that, car loans, credit cards, student loans. So prior to the 2008 financial crisis, one of the biggest securitizers of these loans were these dudes. Who are these dudes? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The Federal National Mortgage Association and the Federal Mortgage Assurance Corporation. Those are federally backed, kind of, sort of, quasi companies that had public stock. And what they would do was they would buy up all these mortgages from all these mortgage companies and banks. Then they would securitize, then they would put them into pools, then they would do the securitization. Why do you think they do that? They still do that, by the way. Yeah, they've ratcheted it down, but why would they, what was the reason that you would have a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
Help get the homes or something,
So here's what it did. It created an extremely liquid pipeline for the banks to offload these loans. So instead of the bank having to go out and get an investment banker and make these pools and go find the investors, that's what Fannie and Freddie did. So all the bank had to do was bundle these things up and they sell them to Fannie and Freddie. They're gone. And then the bank goes out and redoes it. So the reason they did that was to really juice the availability of loans in the system. So the federal government said, hey, we're going to help you banks because we know it's really hard to hold all these loans on your books. We saw that during the SNL crisis, and it all blew up because you had this mismatch of maturities and all that stuff. So we're going to help you. We're going to create Fannie and Freddie and the Federal Home Loan Bank, who would make loans in to be able to actually underwrite these things, so the bank might not even need money at all. We're going to underwrite these mortgage pools for you. So if you're a small bank here in DuPont, Washington, or Monsanto, Washington, and you've got another small bank in Holmesdale, Pennsylvania, and you've got another small bank in Wichita, Kansas, all places where I get to hang out, they can go, well, they're too small to go access the mortgage market. Remember, we had 12,600 little commercial banks. We had thousands of SNLs. We had 17,000 credit unions. They all make mortgage loans. So what they would do is they go, well, I'll sell them to Fannie and Freddie. Fannie and Freddie would then go, look what we can sell to the market, guys. We got these loan pools from all over the country that are extremely well diversified, and you can buy into these as an investor. Isn't this really cool? And we'll service them for you. Isn't that awesome sauce? And so that's what Fannie and Freddie did. They basically facilitated all that securitization. So now the banks didn't have to access lenders or investors on their own. Fannie and Freddie did it for them. It was great. It drove home ownership to all-time highs. But what did it create? It created a bubble. It created a moral hazard because the banks writing this stuff had no real incentive to hold these on their books. They shipped them off. They had an incentive to go, let me give you a little bit higher interest rate, and I'll reduce the amount of underwriting I have to do. Because when I sell them, I sell it at the present value of the expected future cash flows, discounted. And if the market market discount rate's a little bit lower than what I've got for you as a interest rate on the loan, I'm going to get a premium. If you go back to bond theory, back in the last class, and you've got a bond and the market rate is 6%, and if I put CAPM up here, you'd know that, but I won't because Dylan's not here. But if you've got a 6% market rate and the bond or the loan is at 8%, are you going to pay par for that bond or loan? You're going to take the expected future cash flows against that loan. You're going to discount it at 6%. It's going to end up being, if it was a $1,000 bond, you might pay $1,100, $1,200. So the banks would do that all the time. They go, okay, let me give you a little bit higher interest rate. I won't look as hard. I'll give you a little bit higher interest rate. We'll pool these things up. We sell them off. The market rate for mortgages is 6%. I've got a pool of loans at 7%. And so the bank the market would go, okay, I'll give you a little bit more of the par value on it. So we make money there. You make money on the servicing rights. We make money on the fees. This is flipping awesome. But it creates a moral hazard. So it moves the risk off the bank's balance sheets and recycles the capital. If you're a banker, you're doing this all day long until it's on Sunday. Where's your risk?
Pawn it off to somebody else.
Pawn it off to somebody else. Now, you may retain, and this is why the banks ended up in problems during the financial crisis. The market's not stupid. So the market goes, yeah, you're creating a moral hazard. So 2 to 3% of these loans are going to go bad historically. So we're going to make you hold the 5%. So we're going to buy 95% of the loan pool, and you bank have to hold 5%. You're the last 5% to get paid. That's the principle. The bank's like, that's fine. We know 2 or 3% are going to go bad. We've made enough money on the rest of it that we're going to be fine. When that 2, 3, 4, 5% that didn't get repaid turned into 10%, 12%, 15%, all of a sudden, not only are those securitization pools going to heck, but the bank's not getting its money back either. And so what ends up happening then is as it goes up, what you have is a situation where the bank's not getting repaid its 5%, and there may have been, in some cases, what's called a putback provision, which said, okay, for the next 5% at the bottom of the pool, if it gets that bad, where we start getting into the bottom 10%, for the next 5%, you bank, if they go bad, you have to buy these back from us. We can put these loans back to you, and you have to buy them back because you underwrote the loan badly. Now again, when the loan defaults get up 25, 30%, the banks have been wiped out, their equity in the placement have been wiped out, the putbacks have all been exercised, and now the loan pools start going really bad. The bonds start going really bad. But so there's some risk mitigation that was put into the way securitizations were structured so that the banks shared in the risk, but it was nowhere near a high enough percentage relative to the profitability and moral hazard that were built into the bonds until it went to complete hell in a handbasket. And that's why some of the banks that underwrote these mortgages ended up in financial trouble, even though they had moved the bulk of the mortgages off their balance sheet. Does that make sense? I know I'm talking really fast, but I get really excited about this stuff. So you've got a shadow banking system, which is assets like that aren't held by regulated entities. So your shadow banking system is going to be like finance companies and other folks that kind of sit off to the corner and buy these things, underwrite these things, but they're not regulated like banks. So a mortgage company, and I think I told you guys, one of my turnaround things, which didn't go all that well, was I went to accredited home lenders in San Diego and tried to get them fixed in 2008. Got pulled out of the restaurants in Wichita, went to accredited, couldn't stay accredited, they went bye-bye. Lost somewhere around $700 million on that transaction, the private equity firm did. They were in the shadow banking system. Accredited wasn't a bank. They had bank lines. And what they would do is they'd go out and they'd originate these loans and they'd pay them off their bank lines, and then they would bundle these things up in loan securitization pools and then sell them to the bank, which would then sell them to the Federal Home Loan Bank and securitize them. And then they would pay the bank line down, and then they would receive a fee. So now you're outside the bank regulation. They're only passing through the bank to securitize, and as these loan companies got bigger, like Accredited, they can go directly to the securitization market. They have a line with Lehman Brothers. No need to go through a regulated entity. We're going to go straight from unregulated mortgage company or state-regulated mortgage company to investment bank to securitization market. We bypass banking entirely. No, it's a mortgage. That's your shadow banking system. It's not regulated. It's regulated at the state level as a finance company. It's generally not regulated by things like the OCC, Office of Comptroller of the Currency, FDIC. And other folks are going to be a lot more strict and have a lot more visibility into the banking industry than your local dudes down here in Olympia. And then I mentioned this, often the servicing rights are separated by the bank and retained or sold separately. So there's money to be made in servicing the loans too. And the bank would retain that. And what they do is they retain it, you'd be sending you think you're paying your mortgage to Bank of America. Nope. Bank of America is passing that off to whoever the investor is. And taking a cut off every payment, process of payment, and send it off to whoever the investor is.
Is there any way to find out when it happens?
Yeah, that's interesting. So generally, it's pretty difficult to figure out who the actual beneficial owner of your mortgage is.
Wow. So right now, the mortgage is through Bank of America, so what's it?
Oh, it's probably securitized somewhere. So here's an interesting legal thing. Kind of a detour off. Technically, you should know who's got a lien on your house. So can Bank of America foreclose on your house if they don't own the mortgage? It's this loan securitization pool, which is a security, owns your mortgage.
When you get that letter saying Bank of America has sold your mortgage to a Texas company, that might be it, or it might be somebody on that.
Yep. And so there's been some recent lawsuits in, so how many of you guys had Sean Newman for business law? Anybody? He teaches business law down in Lacey and so on. So he's been involved in a couple of lawsuits, and several others have been involved in lawsuits, basically saying, look, fraudulent conveyance of the mortgage. So I don't know who owns this mortgage, but the people who own the mortgage never filed that they own the mortgage with the courthouse. So they don't have a mortgage on my house. It's not been, or never filed with the county clerk. It's never been filed. They don't have a valid mortgage. The folks that have a valid mortgage transferred it, but didn't file a transfer with the county clerk. So this mortgage is unenforceable. You can't foreclose on me.
So now you need to keep the house.
Now I get to keep the house and I don't have to pay the mortgage. Or certainly don't have a right to foreclose on my, you might be able to get money damages, but you can't take my house.
So basically, they become squatters.
Yeah.
It's good if you know that.
But you did a good thing though. You were paying, you won, but you didn't know who owned it. And then,
Well, the courts have kind of said, look, you're trading on technicality.
Yeah.
Right? So this isn't necessarily, so the courts don't just go, okay, look, well, yeah, that's true. You actually have to litigate this thing. And if they say, look, in good faith, all these transactions happened, you did borrow the money, we did promise to pay it back. Yes, the mortgage conveyance might be invalid, but that doesn't relieve you of the responsibility to pay back the mortgage. you still have to pay it back to the original mortgagor, or mortgagor. Then essentially what ends up happening, where it comes out is a lot of times, not a lot of times, on occasion, they find not good faith in that transaction. Where they go, okay, the mortgage broker deliberately put you in a house that he knew he couldn't afford because it was a moral hazard. He wanted his commission, and therefore you got screwed. You didn't know you got screwed. You're an unsophisticated borrower. And so, yes, you owe the money back. No, they can't foreclose the house. You can keep your house. You can pay back as best you can over the remainder of your life, but you're never going to have to give up your home. Or they declare the lien invalid. So the attachment to the property, the mortgage is invalid, but the loan is still due. But if you file bankruptcy, the loan can get wiped away. So you've got, there's some remedies, but at the end of the day, almost everybody's loan, if you have one, your mortgage is owned by not the bank you're paying it to, they're just a servicer. There's somebody back behind that, several steps normally, that's the actual beneficial owner of that mortgage.
Everybody's gonna be bringing in the mortgage contracts. Look, can you tell me if I can file this paperwork?
Well, that's where the courts have kind of said, look, that's not the intent. And so unless there's really bad faith in the transaction, you can prove bad faith, then we'll look at it. Otherwise, suck it up, buttercup, and pay your loan.
Go to come over and have the market. What ones?
Who owns my mortgage? I don't want to pay it anymore.
They're probably like, okay, I think you just told me to listen.
So this will be the last one we cover tonight, which is subprime loans. So back in the housing crisis, this was a big deal. We made a bunch of subprime loans. Right now, the big deal, and what I'm seeing in some of my feeds, and folks that I talk to from my old world, back when I ran a finance company, is subprime auto loans. They're the next big thing to blow up in our face. People are buying a bunch of cars that they can't really afford. They're borrowing, they're getting, their credit sucks. Dealers have no incentive to be able to get their rates down because they're paid their rate X. They got the same incentive. Well, jack them into a higher rate, jack them into a higher price. Then we get to sell a loan. Dealer doesn't have to worry about it. It's done unless they don't make the first couple payments, which case it gets to go back. And so subprime allows people with poor credit histories to borrow legitimately. Do you think they're predatory lending? All the time.
Wait, you're saying if they're getting the loan to credit?
Sure. Subprime loans with credit. Is that predatory? Predatory. Are you preying on people who really can't afford it, jam them into loans that they can't afford?
Well,
And you know that they can't afford it, but you don't really care.
I don't know, because the bank actually has to approve it, so it's not.
But the bank's going to securitize that loan too, so is that?
Well, the bank might look, if the bank looks at it and says, here's their pay stub, here's their payment, go ahead, then obviously, the banks aren't trying to lose money, so if they make the call, then we go with it.
Is subprime lending predatory? Are you taking advantage of people that
I
really
think
can't
so,
afford stuff?
I think so. That's pretty common. On the housing market, where we ran out of people to buy mortgages or get houses, so they lowered the qualification.
Yep, that's subprime lending too. So what if I said,
Or you can be given a second chance and you actually make your payments and build your credit.
so what if I said, hey, look, otherwise you couldn't afford a car.
Yeah, it's like.
So you got a loan,
ways, right?
yeah, it depends. Like almost everything, it's not black and white, it depends. So this is the area where I used to play, kind of, sort of. Finance companies, they borrow money from banks, and then they lend subprime. So I borrow money from a bank. I have a line of credit from RBS, that was one of our banks, Royal Bank of Scotland. And I would borrow it at LIBOR plus 225, so about 4%. And then I would buy assets, in this case, bankrupt credit card lines in Chapter 13 and Chapter 7 bankruptcies. And I would get a rate of return on those credit card loans on Chapter 13 somewhere around 18%. On Chapter 7, somewhere around 60% return annualized. And I pay 4%. I make money on the spread.
Wow.
Now, in bankruptcy, the world that I played in, I can't collect from the debtor. It's against the law. There's this automatic stay goes into place as soon as you file bankruptcy, so that creditors can't come get you. But you know who comes and gets you? The bankruptcy trustee, the bankruptcy court. So they all take a look at, here's my assets, here's your liabilities, they liquidate assets, they pay the creditors, or they go, okay, we garnish your wages, if it's chapter 13, and then they send the wages to the creditors. So instead of being some scum-sucking person who called people and broke their legs, I was a scum-sucking person that bought the bankruptcy loans and had the court do that for me. And then, or for us, because I didn't own the company. And then we make money on the spread. And why would banks sell these things off? Banks knew what the returns were, kind of. Why would they sell them?
So they didn't have to deal with them.
Yeah, so here's what would happen. The OCC, Office of Comptroller of the Currency, bank regulators would say, okay, that consumer's bankrupt. It's a credit card, there's no collateral. You have to write that off to zero. Right away. And then when the money comes in, you can count it as a recovery. So the banks would go, well, that's crap. I know I'm going to collect 18 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, 24 cents on the dollar in these chapter 13s. But you're making me write it off to zero, which means for my stock price and my earnings on my stock, I have to show that they lost. Because I have to take the loan from 100 to zero. And so what they would do is they'd sell it to us for 12 cents. And they take the loan from 100 to 8, or from, they'd take an 88-cent write-off instead. And then we'd collect from 12 cents to 24 cents over 5 years, which gives me to about that 17-18% return. Which then I borrow 4%, and I make money on the spread. It's actually a really good business. Used to be. Can't do it much anymore. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau shut that business down. It was sad. Sad day. It's fine. If I could still do that business, I'd be doing that.
We can still do it illegally.
So finance companies then moved into mortgages and auto loans and leveraged securitization markets. So in the past, I'd borrow money from banks, and I'd have to then lend money on the spread. But I still had to deal with the dang banks. But what happened was these companies said, hey, I can lend subprime, and I can securitize these puppies too. I don't need to rely on the bank anymore, except for this line of credit to kind of churn it. Mine with RBS was not a line of credit, right? It was kind of a permanent structured finance facility. This thing, they could go, okay, let me go out and bang, bang, bang. I'm going to go out and do this stuff, and I'm going to leverage the securitization market. All of a sudden, it opens up all the mortgages. Now I can do a bunch of subprime mortgage lending because I can securitize it in the pools. Or I can do a bunch of subprime auto lending because I can securitize it in the pools. I can do it off my balance sheet. Everybody's happy. How about payday lenders? Sharks.
They serve a critical role in our society.
I will agree with you to a point. What critical role do they serve?
Especially as a military member.
No, I mean, low-income families who are juggling bills and stuff like that, sometimes they can get them from one paycheck to another, so it's not a long, sustained financial structure, but it is good for like maybe one-off emergency situation.
So here's a double-edged sword. I agree with you. Here's a double-edged sword. Payday lenders' effective interest rates get around 100 to 150%. I mean, they're ridiculous because you have fees and interest, and then if you miss this, then they charge more fees or more interest. They're as close to predatory lenders as you're going to find, except for the real predatory lenders, which are the loan sharks and the pawn shops, which are even worse. And so one is completely illegal, and they will come break your legs. And the other one is you're going to have to pony up collateral, and they're going to give you pennies on the dollar for collateral, and then they're going to be very quick to foreclose that collateral to chattel collateral, which is going to be anything that's not real estate or on non-titled stuff. And then they're going to sell it.
Is it a pawn shop?
In the pawn shops, yeah. So those payday lenders are bad, pawn shops are worse, and loan sharks even worse, because loan sharks will They're illegal and will not make your day.
How is that allowed?
So pawn shops, I fees, chattel is collateral. So I'm kind of moving down the food chain. We're getting down to the final ooze.
Who is the real culprit?
So what's usury?
Shit, man.
What's usury?
Never heard.
You never heard of usury?
I've heard the word, but I don't know what it is.
It says the legal limit on interest rates.
Hey!
Oh my God, you got
She got the book out. Who says usury rates?
Keep reading.
go deny. This is
Most states. So states. Here's the deal. Why do you think a lot of the credit cards come out of South Dakota? Because South Dakota's usury rate's really high. So they allow you to charge really high interest. So the banks go for credit card operations in South Dakota, and so they can charge you 26%, 24%. Because in Washington, the usury rate's around 16, so they can't charge you more than 16. Some states as low as 12. It's the highest rate that you can charge by law for a loan originating in that state. And so what they do is they go, oh, well, you're originating your loan through Citibank of South Dakota, NA, National Association, National Bank, and that's a credit card. And you're sending your stuff to Iowa or to South Dakota, two famous credit card states. The other one's Delaware. Those three have really high or no usury limits, so they can jack the rates up on the credit cards and loan them out to you. So usury is the maximum legal amount that can be charged of interest. So how do payday lenders get to 100-some% interest? Effective interest. What's the loophole?
That it is. It's not considered a loan.
No, it's a loan.
If it's not a loan, then what it is?
It's up there.
It's the length of the loan. It's
You get part of it. One is sometimes the usury limit is for loans that extend over 6 months or a year. What's the other? What's the other thing that a payday lender uses to get their effective interest rate up? It's not an interest rate, it's a fee.
yeah.
It's a fee. It's not interest, it's a fee. The interest rate's only 15%. But we got a big fee.
Wow.
Loan origination fee. Late payment fee. A recycle on, we'll extend it for 2 more weeks fee. That's how they get it up. They go around the usury law by calling it a fee. Because the state hasn't regulated that element yet. Here in Washington, they're working to try and do that. However, the lobbying is strong with them.
Speaking of fees, if anyone's gonna go buy a car, I just learned from my finance director that like the docs fee when you're buying a car is a suggestion and you don't.
Oh yeah, you can negotiate that.
And you can tell them you're not gonna pay it. I didn't know that. So like I said, we charge everyone like hundreds of dollars. I mean, that's just not us.
Yeah, it's a profit. It's beautiful
Any
profit
car
for you guys.
person has a document, and
Yeah.
it's actually a suggestion, but they just say like if the license title document.
Yeah.
And they combine it all into one big lump sum, people are like, okay, whatever, that's my tax for a year.
Yeah, you can
But
negotiate
there
that.
is a fee in there that's called document fee, and that is suggested, but they don't present it like that.
No. I think normally it says in small print, it's negotiable.
How much is it
I
north
think
of
it's,
that?
I think it's supposed to on your sales contract.
It's like 150 to 500.
So is this okay?
I don't give it.
I mean,
I believe
It's
it's.
okay.
Yeah, I think it is okay because no one's like forcing you to do it, you're coming to these people asking for it.
That's why they do this because people.
Yeah, like
It's
I
in
don't want
demand,
to
you know?
gun your head, you came there and bought a money loan, you came there.
Taking
and bought a payday
advantage
loan.
though.
What's the color meaning?
You're offering